Hello and welcome to Gimmerish FM. My name is James and I am joined by Natalie.
Hello.
Natalie Blom.
That's right.
Where are you from, Natalie?
So I live in Perth, Western Australia, and I grew up in a small country town in the West Australian wheat belt called Merredin.
Fancy.
I wouldn't say fancy. Something.
My family is from Corrigan.
Oh, yeah.
And Merredin is like a big town compared to Corrigan.
Yeah,
so
that's
it's
definitely
like
true.
A step up. You know?
Totally.
So Merredin is like the fancy.
We had like chicken treat.
Yeah. And did you... we'll get into this. We're currently recording in the city, just outside the West Australian Art Gallery of WA. What do you call it?
Yeah, Agua.
At the artificial wetlands that's on the second story of a car park. And there's ducks swimming in front of us. It's the evening, 28th of January, for the people listening in the future. 2020. Are you excited about 2020 now?
I was hesitant about trying to get used to the year and its name, but I'm here for it.
Do you get excited about year numbers?
No, I get stressed because I always get it wrong in the beginning, and this is going to be like extra wrong for a longer period of time.
Oh, right.
It's two numbers wrong, not just one.
Yeah. And apparently everyone I've been telling is like, oh, you got to put 2020 down, otherwise people can like, if you just put 20 down, people can backdate it to 2019.
Yeah, my parents were like, oh,
this is something that's going around on Facebook.
Yeah,
like so many people
definitely some sort of... I mean, it's probably got some legitimacy, but
yeah.
I don't know, who could be bothered? Sorry, I'm really distracted by this like pigeon versus duck thing that's about to go down. Oh, and that mudlark's getting amongst it as well.
It is kind of cool they've got a little wetland up here.
Yeah.
I remember this was just like a concrete sort of...
fountainy thing. And it was like painted a weird sort of blue to appear tranquil.
Okay.
I assume.
And they had a cool statue. I don't know if it's still here.
With the person making... looks like they were yelling, that one?
Yeah,
really tall?
Like yeah, maybe.
I wonder where that is now.
Yeah. I wonder if it's around the corner or something. I met Natalie at the Perth Comics Arts Festival.
Oh, yes.
Natalie doesn't realise this.
Oh,
and
sneaky.
you were in the market stall selling your wares.
Oh, yes.
What were you selling? What were you hawking?
Yeah, so I make zines, predominantly photographic zines or photo zines. And I run I'm a distro, and we focus on trying to get people's work out there. So zines, I guess like maybe we should cover what zines are specifically.
Yeah, what is zine?
Yeah, okay. So a zine is a self-published item, usually in the form of some sort of booklet. Zine, I think, strictly comes from magazine, but is shortened to sort of demonstrate that it's something a little bit different. And yeah, basically it's something that somebody can make. So artists, comic writers, photographers can produce a zine of their work, and nobody gets a say in what they put in it because they get to do it all by themselves. It's very independent.
When you say you're part of you're doing it your own sort of distribution thing, what does that mean? Like people still make their own and give it to you?
Yeah, so I run an event called Xerox Days. I forgot to tell you guys that. And we try to run events twice yearly, and that's to bring together the zine community within Perth. I know that other cities over east have quite active zine communities, and they run lots of different events and things, which we don't so often have strictly in Perth. So I thought it'd be nice to get everybody together, because I know people in Perth are producing zines. Generally, I think they might be selling to friends or selling online, but there wasn't really a facility for people to come together and show all the lovely work they've been working on together. And also as a platform for people who maybe don't produce zines but are interested in zines and want to know a little bit more to be able to come along and have a bit of a look.
Sounds cool.
Yeah.
How did you get into zines?
So years ago in high school, I can't remember what I was reading, some sort of, I don't know if it was a blog or something, but I came across the idea of a zine, and it was just like a photocopied zine made by a girl over east, and she was sort of into punk music, so she was producing like reviews about different bands and like promo for gigs and stuff. And I was like, hey, that's a cool idea. You can just put whatever you want. And at the time I was sort of drawing and writing poems and bad poems and bad art, but it was a way to kind of make something that was unique. And then there was quite a big following on the internet about zine culture and zine production. So it was a nice way to kind of have a bit of an outlet for artwork. And then I moved to the city to study for a few years, and I sort of put that away and didn't really think about it for a while. And then more recently I was living in London, and a friend of mine was like, hey, you want to come over to this event? It's going to have a bunch of zines being sold. And I was like, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. And it all kind of came back together. And so then I started putting photographic zines together. So basically, yeah, just most photographers generally, I would say, work in thematic sets. They might work on a project. They're like, oh, I'm really into, I don't know, it could be portraits, or it could be a particular beach, or there might be something that they're like continually coming back to. And I think that a zine is a nice way to present work in a way that's a collective. So it's not just like, oh, here's this one photo on a wall or this one photo on Instagram. The zine allows for sequential art to come together, and you can kind of look at it in a more whole sort of fashion, so the images work together rather than being independent of one another, which I think is super fun.
You were saying you sort of discovered zines on what, blogs?
I think it was blogs. I don't really remember, like it was...
What era was this in?
Okay, so I graduated high school in 2004, so I reckon it was around like 2002, 2003 maybe.
Okay.
So it's like... But there's arguments...
Because like the blog was like the hot thing back then. You got to have a blog. That's why my friends didn't make zines, because we made our own blogs.
Yeah, like Live Journal. Do you remember what platform you were using?
I used Blogger.
Yeah, solid.
Some of my friends were like fancy because they were into web design and had their own like custom WordPress installation on a server somewhere.
It was like the step up from like, ooh, I just like mod my MySpace.
Yeah. And everyone would link to each other's posts and say, oh, check out what this person's doing, or make a comment on it.
Yeah, like you'd have to like, oh, did you see my like recent post? And everybody would be like commenting, and it'd be really like, I don't know, like you had to like keep up with reading everybody's content. And yeah, early internet days.
I felt a lot more going on to like Facebook or something. It's kind of like, oh, this is like the last thing on earth I want to be doing, but I'm doing it because I've got nothing better to do. Yeah,
true. Whereas I feel like when people were, even if it was just like journaling online or like personal blogging, it was always like, oh, I worked really hard on this.
Yeah.
And you'd brag to you're like, oh, did you see it? Like, I just posted it.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I still follow a couple of people on blogs, and I actually really love, like, this one random person I follow, I think it's been on this podcast, has a blog, and I don't like go to their website, but I just put my email in to get sent out, so it gets sent to you as like an email.
What was it called? There was like it was a specific thing. It was an RSS feed?
Yes. The whole blog, a blog is an RSS feed basically, but you get an RSS feed reader back in the day, and you put everyone's blog in there. You could get them in like a feed, kind of like Twitter. Yeah. And Twitter kind of destroyed those apps, or there's still people passionate about them in really obscure corners of the internet. But yeah, I'm always like, I wrote this book, and I'm thinking of like, man, I should just do that. Just put each chapter out as like a post on a blog, but you have to subscribe to it and put your email, and it gets sent to you as an email.
It's like a Patreon, but you want it to be not going to other people. Like nobody just take a cut of your sick novel.
Yeah, but this is one of the things I wanted to get you on about, because like I'm zine curious, and like the thing that I'm most interested about is like sort of this micro distribution sort of method, like trying to keep the production costs down, and you're sharing them at a very local level. You're not like mass throwing it out into the ether, trying to get every person on earth to try and consume it somehow. It's like people can pick them up and touch them, and
I think the tactility is a really like important part, I guess, because we're working more and more into this whole digital, everything's kind of non-tactile. So I think when somebody picks up a zine and they can kind of see, oh, it feels like this, or it's this heavy, or the paper's like this, you kind of like start to wonder like, oh, how has somebody actually gone and photocopied this all on their own? Yeah, I guess the physicality is quite important.
I bought one of your zines. Is it called Fractured?
Shattered Horizon?
Shattered Horizon.
Yes.
God. And that's what would you call that? It's like a photography
Yeah, it's like a photo zine. Yep.
Does that have its own name in the zine world?
I guess photo zine is kind of...
Zine or something.
Yeah, photo zine is like a common... I guess that hashtag gets used quite heavily on Instagram, not necessarily for physical zines, but often people will like use photo zine as like a tag for, I guess, like a hub account where they might be like, oh, this is the type of thing that we always post. But yeah, that was the first photo zine that I produced, I guess, like after I'd already made the series. So it was like I'd made the series years before, and then I manufactured the zine afterwards as like, this is, guys, remember this? Like, this is a thing that I made a while ago. And it's actually surprisingly, it was very popular, I guess, because I haven't made that many zines that are like only film photography based. And that series was produced entirely using a Holga camera, which is like a trash toy camera that's really bad, but a lot of fun to use. And when I say bad, I just mean like it's made in almost entirely of plastic. The lens is plastic. It's not very reliable. It's quite a soft lens, obviously, being made of plastic. Has lots of like quirks about like light leaking and the back just like falling off so that your film is like totally ruined. But yeah, it's kind of one of those things where you're like, if you, I guess, like manhandle it into behaving, it's quite rewarding when you get a picture that you're like, oh, damn, that's pretty cool.
And so the shattered theme, like the sort of images have these sort of shattered look to them. Is that an accident of the camera and you're taking advantage of it, or are you taking the images and then processing them to be like that?
No, so it's all the production of those pictures is done in camera. So as they're taken, they are shot on the film. So yeah, the idea was that when I was playing around with the Holga and kind of working it all out, quite often you would find yourself like overlapping frames because the Holga, unlike lots of other cameras which either force you to wind on to the next frame or automatically wind on for you, it doesn't prompt you to do anything. It expects you to make all the decisions. So you would find like layer after layer of imagery being laid over the top of one another just by accident. And so then I started playing around with that idea of like multiple exposure or multiple partial exposure. So a lot of the pictures in that series are like a panorama of, say, like the cityscape, but imperfectly matched together. So it's a little bit like looking through a kaleidoscope, I suppose, might be a good way of describing what those images look like. And you're just sort of really playing around with that idea of like layering exposure to kind of, I guess, make a place something that I guess like making a place out of somewhere that doesn't really exist. Like it's kind of like the Perth city skyline, but it's actually a little bit different at the same time.
The reason I bought it is because like it kind of hit that sort of nostalgia bone that these are kind of scenes that you recognise from, you know, the local area, things that you've seen, and I guess maybe by accident that they kind of, you know how like in your dreams you kind of have I don't know if you have dreams where you kind of, I'm in that house, I'm in my friend's house, but it's just slightly different.
Yeah, totally. Like all the time. And you don't really know why you think it's that place, but you're like, it's definitely there. Yeah.
And even to the point where sometimes you have dreams where you go back to the house in real life and go, wasn't there a room here? Or that was just in my dream.
Yeah, totally.
Depending on the situation. But that was kind of what hit me. I was like, that just flicking through the thing at the market stall was like, this is that feeling. And I was like, god damn, I have to buy this now. Not that there was anything wrong with that, but I was just like,
princely sum of $12.
When you're at a market hall with all these amazing stuff and you're like, I want to buy so many things, and
so true.
You have to like pick out the 5, and it's like, yes, that was definitely one of the 5 that I got that day.
So one of the fun things about zine culture is it's quite zine trading is quite big. So between makers, it's very common to kind of encourage or consider zine trades as opposed to just sort of purchasing one another's work, which has been a part of the scene for a really long time. What
would they keep the trade, or would they then resell that on at maybe their next distribution event that they go to?
So generally, if it's traded, it's presumed that that's to keep. So rather than me purchasing a zine from another maker and then purchasing my zine, we just avoid the money part and just go, cool, have this. It's fun.
But you were representing, your table at the Perth Comic Arts Festival was representing a bunch of people. So you were representing what Xerox Days rather than yourself, and so you had a bunch of other people's stuff there.
Yeah. So with a part
of coincidence, the one I picked up was made by you.
Yeah, I got lucky.
Yeah.
Just hit them with a decent cover, and they get excited.
Yeah.
So one part of Xerox Days, which I actually borrowed from a zine fair over in London, is they would have a communal table where they would sell anyone's zine. So maybe I'm a maker and I've made my first zine, and that's it, kind of thing. Sometimes going to one of these bigger fairs, it can be really intimidating for that person to just be like, oh yeah, I want a table and I want to sit there all day and talk to people about this one publication. Like, maybe they don't feel like that's a legitimate reason to want to table, or it's their first time, or they're not really sure what to expect. So I wanted to have that still be a possibility for makers. So even if that's your first zine, you're not really convinced that it's that good, or you're a bit unsure about having to talk to people, or perhaps maybe you are a rural maker and you can't make it all the way down to the city just for one afternoon, or perhaps so maybe you have access requirements, so that might prevent you from actually getting to the venue. I wanted all those things to kind of be circumvented by having the communal table. So I offered to sell other people's zines for them. I don't take commission on that. I just want to make sure that lots of people have access to lots of different types of publications. And yeah, so that's how I sort of organised that. So tried to offer spots for different people who maybe are over east. The benefit there is that obviously Perth makers and Perth buyers have access to a greater range of material that maybe they haven't seen before or considered, which is pretty fun.
Yeah, it's cool. Do you act as a like an editor? Do you have zines that are a collation of different people's works and put them together?
No.
Or you're more about bringing individuals' zines and selling them as separate items?
Yeah, I haven't really played around with collaborative zines. Lots of zine makers do like to do collaborative stuff, so either they work with another artist to produce something collectively, or perhaps they might do something along the lines of like a submission process.
Yeah.
But I haven't really headed there yet. It'd be something that I would potentially like to do in the future, but I think at the moment it's just still sort of working out how to successfully run an event. There's enough on the plate right now, but yeah.
I think I saw on your Instagram, I'm not sure if it was your personal one or the Xerox Days one, that you're going to an event over east.
Yeah. Yep.
What does that mean? Over
in Melbourne is a shop called Sticky Institute, and so they just sell zines. That's all they do.
Is that like on the street, like in a little box?
It's in a shop front that's actually located in one of the subway kind of hallways underneath Flinders Street Station.
Yeah, I think I went there when I was last there and it was closed. Just the day I went, it was annoying.
They do have like limited, so they're completely run by volunteers. I think they might get some funding, but I'm not totally sure. I know that they get funding for the event that I'm going for, which is the Festival of the Photocopier. So they're having a very large event. I think last year's event they had something like 300 different stall holders over, I think it was 2 days.
Yeah. So what kind of venue would they hold that in?
I think they used to have it in the town hall, but they've outgrown the venue.
Oh, wow.
Like it's getting pretty massive. So that's pretty exciting. I haven't tabled at a fair that's not in Perth before, but it's...
so you're actually going to have your own table?
Yeah. So I'm going to have a table for one of the days, not both days. So it's run over a Saturday and a Sunday. So I'm going to table on the Saturday, and then on Sunday I am going to treat myself to a wander around and meeting lots of different people.
Yeah, actually get to enjoy it.
Yeah, some of the makers who have sent work over for Xerox Days I've never met in person, so that'll be a nice way to kind of like introduce myself to some people who have made some really amazing artwork. And yeah, maybe looking for some other people who might be interested in getting their work out over west, because I'm sure there's lots of good content that we're missing out on.
Are they going to have like talks and stuff that you can go to? Like,
so normally they do. I know that there's one talk that's been that's going to be on the Friday night by, I think it's a US scene maker. I'm not really sure of what type of work they produce, but I'll probably try and stick my head in if I get in time.
What is the online zine scene like? Where's that all happening?
Yeah, I mean,
I know you have an Instagram page, but is that where people sort of get together, or is there?
I feel like that's probably like where people have their greatest reach, because zines are obviously being tactile and physical. You can get obviously a picture of it as well as whatever content it is that it contains. So it's quite visual. Yeah, I mean, lots of people also have their own kind of little stores on their websites, you know, Big Cartel and Squarespace and all those sorts of things. Etsy has a lot of zines for sale as well, so you can have your own little Etsy store with lots of, I mean, obviously you can sell any handmade object, but zines are very applicable to that platform. Yeah, I guess it's just kind of like, there used to be a few like forums that were based on zine production and zine selling, but I don't know if lots of them are that active any longer. Like most kind of forums have.
It's all gone to like Facebook groups now.
Yeah, Facebook groups. There's a Zines Australia which is quite active. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was just wondering, like, how do you discover what's going on? You know?
I reckon lots of the things that I've really enjoyed reading and purchasing have been I found by like just searching through people's feeds or just hashtags for zines or photo zines or whatever type of zine it is that I'm looking for. Just kind of digging around, looking at what other people are liking as well, following a few like hubs or other distributors who, you know, might post about different works that they're really keen on or that are new in. Oh, there's a podcast by a maker, Nick's Sea Green Zines. I can't remember. I think it's called the Zine Collector, and they was recommending different zines and stuff.
Awesome. Do you listen to a lot of zine podcasts, or just that?
I'm pretty new to podcasts, to be honest.
Yeah, okay.
Like, it's one of those things that I've dabbled lightly in, but I'm getting more into it now.
Going back to like what you said, you discovered zines when you were in high school.
Yeah.
But you didn't get into making them till later, or were you make your own?
I was making like really bad. So in the zine scene, we call them per-zines. I don't know if I've ever said that out loud. That's funny. But like personal zines, so where you're just like, oh, today was really shit and my mum's a bitch and whatever. And then here's like an angsty poem or something. So I was reading a lot of personal zines. One of the ones that I was reading was actually, I don't know how I did it, because I don't think at the time I had like a credit card. Like I don't know how I purchased things off the internet at the time, which I've sort of a mystery to me now. I'm always wondering how it is I did it. But yeah, there was a maker in Portland in the US who wrote a zine called, I don't know if it was called Culture Saw and then it got changed to Saw, if it was the other way around. It started out as Saw Zine and then became Culture Saw. But it was just kind of like about their life, and I found that quite interesting because obviously it was quite different to life here and for me in the Wheat Belt. So it felt quite like interesting and like exclusive in a way that I didn't really have
in the Wheat Belt. What was the zine distribution scene like in the Wheat Belt?
Oh, yeah, you went to Australia Post and you collected your mail, and all the posties were like, why do you get such weird packages from overseas? What are you doing? Yeah. Because I guess back in those days I'd always write letters back to makers that I was like, oh, this is pretty cool, like I like your stuff.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, they just get like strange packages. I think, and also there was like a big Sub Pop Records was doing a zine. They were like, I don't know, like an indie / punk kind of label. That could be like completely inaccurate. That's just me trying to remember. But yeah, they were making a zine and were like doing distribution through like mail cataloguing and stuff. Yeah. So there was a lot of just like listening to stuff because you were like getting it through the post rather than necessarily just online.
So did you have like friends to chat about this?
Yeah, I mean, nobody that I really kept in contact with. Like there was a number of years where moving to the city and it was just like pretty busy and full on, kind of lost touch of sort of pre-Perth internet friends.
As in people in Meriden?
As in people that you knew online.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
But yeah, it was not, I don't really know, being from the country, like you would have a friendship group that would just like kind of out of convenience, like, oh, you're a person my age and we don't hate each other, therefore we are now friends, as opposed to maybe like when you're living in a larger city, you find friends who have similar interests to you. Yeah. So I think I was the only person that I really knew that was interested in like making weird books about stuff that you liked.
What was the first thing you did coming to Perth? Like, how did you first make friends in the city?
Well, I was coming to Perth to study, and so
you make uni friends or TAFE friends?
Yeah, TAFE friends. And yeah, then you kind of like, you're in the art scene, so you probably had like, I don't know if you ever heard of DeviantArt. Terrible, like...
DeviantArt?
DeviantArt, yeah, it's like a...
Like .com?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So that was like a...
That's still around. Every now and then I get sent a DeviantArt link.
Yeah, you'd have like meetups with different people, and you'd meet people through that. And
there's a DeviantArt scene in Perth.
Yeah, it wasn't massive,
right.
But it was there. It was a thing. Still like chat to probably like
pre-Facebook. There was so much cool stuff on the internet.
Yeah, we just sort of had like weird little pockets of internet rather than like big internet.
Kind of just came homogenized with Facebook, and I'm sure that's an elitist view of my part because so few people had sort of everyone had a Facebook account, and it's more likely to propagate up stuff that would be hidden in the shadows on the internet before.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just feels like the internet isn't as fun as it used to be. Like we had like our own forum for school, high school, where you'd go on and something would happen on the forum and the principal would get involved and like
amazing.
You would have to the mum will get rung and say, you got to, I was a moderator on one of the forums, so I got a call saying, you got to take this post down because it's, it talks about sex and it's going to get the kids too excited about sex and all this stuff.
You don't want that.
Yeah.
You don't want kids excited about sex. It's not like they do that on their own.
Well, it's probably like, because we were like, 16 or 17, we're probably, I don't know, it's probably somehow weirdly classified as like child porn or something like that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, true. The internet has created a whole kettle of fish? Yeah.
Yeah. Because then there were public websites. It wasn't like you got, it wasn't until Facebook where you kind of locked behind a wall. But back then, everything was public, so any weirdos could come into your forum, and you would have a private section maybe, like to be elitist and like, I'm going to let my friends into my private section. But most of it was all on the public boards that anyone could have access to. But
that's such a weird thought now. Once we've like sort of thought, we've come this far into internetdom that we're like, oh, gross.
Yeah.
And yet we're still like broadcasting our every move through social media. Like, I'm here.
There's some people like trying to bring back the indie web, trying to get people off Instagram, but it's too much momentum now.
It's very big.
Yeah.
And it's very interconnected with everything else we do in our lives. So I think
that's maybe why zines seem to be coming back. That's like why I'm, or maybe it's just because I've been zine curious and looking into it, and now I'm seeing them everywhere. But there are some people like, let's go back to offline things where, as soon as you have to print something out, you have to put a little bit more thought into what you're posting, because you have to spend the time to like go to Office Works and work out how to print double pages so they line up when you staple them. And
don't even. I'm having like moment here.
Yeah.
Like okay. So one of the things that gets me about printing zines is like if you're not just doing like a straight, I don't know, if you're doing anything back and front, you have to like choose which side of the page the following side flips.
Yep.
So it's like long or short side, and for a really long time I was like, what am I doing wrong? Why is it upside down? I don't understand. And then I was like, oh, hang on, you idiot. Like, it prompts you. It says this way or that way, and you just press the wrong button over and over again.
Yeah.
But that's the difference between like posting something online. Like you can get, I don't know, like a server error or like a post error of some kind, but with the physicality of making a zine, you're like, do I cut and paste this? And if I put it here, is that going to work when I put it through that photocopying machine?
Yeah.
Or like, there's all this other sort of problem solving and like learning that you end up with. You're like, I can't make it that dark because then it all disappears when I photocopy it. Or yeah.
Do people like that you meet through your zine stuff, like, do some people like really into the publication side? Like they get really, I mean, is it Shattered Horizon? Is like a very high quality, like it's verging on, I guess it's a photo book, it has to be quite high quality print. I don't think, did you do that by hand? And then it got digitized afterwards? Or?
Well, obviously, like, the content production for Shattered Horizon was through, like, film photography, so that's sort of handmade-ish. Then it gets, like, my process is to scan it because, I mean, it's colour photography, so it's, you know, the darkroom process for that is super complicated, so it's not my jam.
Yeah.
So it gets scanned, so then it's kind of in the digital realm. But then, so all of my photo zines I produce with a local business. So here in Perth we have the Environmental Printing Co. So they print with soy inks and on recycled papers. And one of the reasons why I really liked working with them is because I'd eat for like maybe 3 months before I actually produced my first zine. I was like, hi, I have another question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. And I work at a photo lab, and so like I know how sometimes you have to just like swallow it and be like, oh, you're back again with another question. Of course you are.
Yeah.
But they're really kind, and they weren't put off by all my ridiculous questions. And so eventually I got like pretty comfortable with the process, and so I've made probably four zines with them. And they were very kind in that. So being from like a photographic background and having some printing experience, I was kind of picky with the colour output and the density output. So them allowing me to print like a proof copy before going with the whole print run was always really good. So I could double check the colours and the density and how sort of things sort of come out. And yeah, they were just very, very kind.
So how many like proofs did you do before you're like, I'm ready to print 100 of them?
Well, I try not to be a dickhead, and I only printed one.
I wish people could see her sort of expression.
I'm allowed to make the swears. I don't want to be rude.
Oh, you can, yeah.
Yeah, and so I printed one, and I was like, oh, okay, like, I think I understand the difference, because obviously, like, yeah, there's whole issues with, like, calibration of my monitor versus, like, their output and all this kind of stuff, so you're sort of, like, working backwards from your proof, being like, oh, it's come out too blue, what do I do to take the blue out? Or it's come out too dark, what do I do to make it brighter? So you're kind of guesstimating from that point on. But generally speaking, having a proof just, like, tells you if it's working or not, like, something to do with, like, the canter of the pictures, which is, like, canter, I guess, in speech is, like, where your emphasis is and how quickly things happen. And so in photo books you think about, like, what sits on the left-hand side versus the right-hand side. The right-hand side, because we're Westerners, we open from, you know, that side is kind of where you're looking when you've already flipped the page, how things work together on double-page spreads, if you want double-page spreads or if you want individual pictures per page. Like, all of that stuff is sort of like, it's kind of important when you're sequencing a zine. Some people don't really, like, mind so much how it works, but I kind of like the way that images kind of talk together between themselves and how they work across pages. So yeah, that's another thing that you kind of consider. But that can kind of be quickly worked out with one proof. You're like, oh, that photo is suddenly really, like, prominent. Maybe I'll put something else there instead. Or, like, that's not prominent enough, so I want to put it somewhere else. And looking at what you put on your, like, centre spread, because you're like, you want to put, like, the extra shiny, impressive photo there because it's going to sit flat and nice and neat and stuff and not have any creep or anything.
So did you, before you even went to them, did you have like a PDF?
Yeah, so
like a digital version that you could see on your computer to try and...
Yeah, so I would work in InDesign and lay it out and have a bit of an idea of what's happening.
So does InDesign have like tools to go, okay, even though this is page 1 and 2, these are actually going to be on different printed out pages? Does that work that out? Stuff out?
So what you're talking about is imposition, which is like, so if I have an A4 sheet of paper or 2 A4 sheets of paper and I fold it in half, like the front cover is across one side of like the first page, and then page 2 is on the inside, and then the very last page, which might be like page 11, might be on the back of the other side, so it has to split it. That's a different process. So InDesign will output a file,
just a linear
that's just
PDF.
like a linear, exactly, so like 1 to however many, and then you have to put it through a separate process to get it to like mix all the pages kind of up halfway.
Does InDesign like InDesign does that separate process?
No, I think you have to do it separately through something else. But if you take it to a printer, they will magic it. They will do the magic for you.
I've got a pretty cool tool that does it. Kind of like it's just some hack that someone, if you have a Mac has like PDF systems built into it, and it just uses that to run a script, and it just rearranges, like scrambles your PDF up.
That's handy to know. I know you can. There's like online tools to help.
Yeah, like you put
I haven't
the
had
PDF
as much success with that. Sometimes it can be a bit glitchy from what I've known. But normally if I'm doing... So sometimes rather than doing like quite a big run that I do with the environmental printing code, which is usually 100 zines at a time, if I'm just doing something smaller, so maybe like rather than an A5 zine, I might be doing like an A6, which is like a quarter of an A4. So the folded result is an A6, so a quarter of an A4. Normally I'll make something up that's like a dodged together, like photocopied version, and then work out if I'll do the imposition myself, and then be like, oh, it's matching up. Yes, it's okay. I can take it to Officeworks and print it out, and it won't suck.
Yeah. Yeah, I was like, think I was so smart. I turned up to Officeworks with like my already imposition PDF, and I was like, yep, I've got this. And then like the logos that Officeworks uses to describe like sort of the way it prints stuff out is different to what I had at home. I'm like, oh no. And of course I had two ways of doing it, and of course the first one I chose was the wrong one.
Yeah. It's a little bit heartbreaking.
At least when I'm just doing cheap stuff for myself, it's only costs you like $2.
Yeah. But you want to. That's why you need to, like, even with yourself, you're like, oh, just do a little one proof just to make sure that the back is on the back and not somewhere else. But yeah, then sometimes, so I don't really make photocopied photo zines, but I make like other silly zines about like. So there's a challenge in November that's called, again, another thing I haven't said out loud, Zine Rimo. So it's Zine
NaNoWriMo
kind of
for zines.
Yeah. And so you make like as many mini zines as you can in the month kind of thing, and there's different prompts, and it's kind of fun.
So you're not just making one big zine? No,
it's like mini zines. So you can make a zine out of a folded A4 with a single cut that'll let you have like, I think it's 8 sides. And I've made zines that are about like my preferences in notebook, or like how anxious I get when street charity subscribing people come up to me.
Oh yeah.
Or like just like sort of not throw away, but like things that I'm less committed to. Like I'm not like, oh, nobody's going to pay $12 for that, but maybe you might pay 20 cents because it's silly. Yeah. So then, the good thing about zines is you don't have to go full colour 32 sides. Like it doesn't have to be this shiny beast of a thing. It can just be like, I used a work printer and I made this thing, and it's just photocopied, and that's kind of cool too, which makes it quite diplomatic as a medium. You don't have to be as shiny and pretty. It can just be like, bang this together and I thought it was funny, and that's like, it doesn't have to be this like a grandeur of like, oh, I've worked really hard on this, and it's like my heart and soul. Like it's a dumb thing that I thought was funny, and I think other people might find it funny too.
Yes.
So that's a very flexible medium, I think.
The other 3 that you did with the environmental publishing company?
Yeah, so the first zine I ever made, when I was living in London, I spent a lot of time photographing graveyards and cemeteries. Okay. So...
Why? Can we ask that?
They're really pretty over there. I mean, they're nice here too. I mean, I find them nice.
But what was the chicken and the egg there? Like, you open your photos album on your phone or your iPhoto, and you're like, whoa, I've got a huge amount of photos of cemeteries here. Like, maybe I should do something about it? Or did you have the idea first, then go out and find? So
very rarely do I realise I have a project until I'm halfway through, and I'm like, oh yeah, like I'm repeatedly doing this one thing. Maybe I should do something about that. The thing that I had on my to-do list to go and visit some of these particularly old cemeteries. So there are the Magnificent 7 cemeteries in London, which were, before these cemeteries, you were just buried in a graveyard which is attached to a church.
Yeah.
And then like plagues happened and like overpopulation caused like problems with hygiene, and they started thinking, all right, this isn't working. What do we do with all these dead bodies? Because they had like loads.
Yeah.
And they started to do what America did, which was create a separate cemetery.
Yeah.
Where you would be interred specifically, and they'd be a bit further out of the city, and they would be kind of like bigger so that you could get buried correctly and hygienically. And a friend of mine, she had to fly out early and she couldn't go to this tour of Highgate Cemetery, which is like a cemetery you can only access by going... Well, there's two sections. There's one section that's more modern, and then the old section you can only access by going on a particular tour. And some really... Now that I'm trying to think of names of people, I'm drawing a blank. But there's lots of very famous people buried in that cemetery. The only person I can think of right now that are buried in that section of the cemetery is like Radcliffe Hall, who's like a LGBTQI author from like way back. And then in the modern section is like Karl Marx and is it Douglas Adams, Hitchhiker's Guide?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's buried there. But yeah, basically any of these old cemeteries have like loads of famous peeps. And so I photographed in all 7 of them. And then when I got back to Australia and I sorted out my stuff, I was like, oh, this is a good project to undertake when you're depressed because you're back in Perth suddenly. Not that Perth is actually bad. Just shy of 2 years.
Okay.
So it was less like, oh, I'm back in Perth and that's bad. It was just like, oh, I really miss that life. Like
you would have had friends and routines. And
lots of... And you're just like, you're doing new things all the time. New things you never thought you would do because you're like, there's nowhere in Perth that I can drive a canal boat. Yeah. Or there's no one else that cares about making camera-free photography. Like, I mean, it's not that there's no one, but there's just like no club.
Camera-free photography?
Yeah, so...
Like pinhole?
Pinhole photography or like photograms or chemograms, which is just like, I'm going to pour some chemistry on some photographic paper and it's cool.
Oh, wow, okay.
And expose it to the sun.
Yeah.
So yeah, like quite like niche activities that there's just...
How did you get into that? Did you go there for that purpose? Or
I went to London just for like, let's go on a working holiday for a bit.
Get a job in a pub or something?
I tried that. I'm not an old lady, but I was in my late 20s and learning hospo in your late 20s is not a thing that I advise for someone like me. Like, I've never worked hospitality. I've worked lots of retail, but yeah, it's a hard... Like, I have a new respect for anyone that works hospitality because you guys get hammered all the time.
It is insane.
It's very intense. So yeah, I tried the pub thing. I don't think I have the stamina. But I had a really great job at a museum and made lots of friends there, which was super fun.
What kind of museum?
Ooh, medical. A medical museum.
Oh, right. Is this like where they've got like, what's his name? Eric the Ripper's victims in a jar or something?
I mean, they had lots of dead stuff. It's called the Wellcome Collection, and it's located in
Jack the Ripper.
Houston.
Think of Eric the Ripper.
One of the second, so the first...
was the Elephant Man there?
No, but they had... so I was on my induction, so one of the visitors' experience assistants was like showing us around in the... like the regular collections. And I'm standing there and I'm looking at this thing and I'm going, that is a really detailed diagram of a human body. Mm. And she's like, turns to it and goes, and this is our human slice. And I go, whoa.
Okay.
So it's like a slice of a person that's probably about 4 mil thick.
Yeah.
So you can just see like all of the internal bits.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
Was it preserved with?
Yeah. So if you or any of your listeners, look at me go, is familiar with Bodyworks, which is an exhibition that's semi-permanent in Amsterdam, and it was produced by, I think his name is Gunther von Hagen, and he basically just like chopped lots of bodies up, human, animal, and produced these kind of pieces that define, I guess, in a different way, anatomy.
Is that like that plastinine?
Yeah, where he sort of like runs it through like all the veins and then removes the other bits, and then you've just got like the system left.
Yeah, wow.
But yeah, plastination.
I think I was in a Casino Royale. Was it? James Bond.
How did we get here? Oh, so yeah.
I missed
my museum very much and my museum friends. And I came back to Perth, and then I produced Interment, which is the first zine I ever made. So it's just like a series of pictures from these particular cemeteries and a few other select cemeteries around in Europe. Cemetery tourism is the thing that I would recommend everybody have a little bit of a look at, because it's surprising.
You've got like this sort of a morbidity theme going on here.
Yeah, kind of.
Or did you catch it from working at the medical museum?
No, I think I had it much before then. But
would you get buried in Merredin?
No.
Do you ever think about
it's really hot.
getting buried?
It's very hot.
But getting buried's kind of gone out of fashion.
Yeah, it has. I haven't quite resolved how I would like to be dealt with. I'd like it to be environmentally friendly. But
there's like this thing on like Reed Highway, maybe, like when you're heading sort of towards Karrinyup Shopping Centre. There's a little bush area where you can just get buried in the bush with no coffin.
Oh yeah.
You know, it's kind of like a natural burial or something.
You could always donate yourself to a body farm.
Yeah.
That's an interesting one.
But you have it, or is that just a passing phase in cemeteries? You don't go, oh, I can design my headstone.
No, I mean, I'm less interested in my own interment as I am in, I guess, like...
You haven't written a will that says what I want to happen?
No, I mean, I've written wills about, like, somebody care about my photos and show people them, or, like...
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
I've thought a little bit about that, but less about what I want done with myself. I think it's just about, like, the idea that we construct a process that we're like, this is how we look after the dead, which culturally, like, every culture has its own way of dealing with that. And even if you're like, so the difference between, say, the iconography within, like, a London cemetery versus how graves and vaults are made in, say, like, France. So you sort of start to pick out, oh, you know, everybody's really into, like, having this type of a vault as opposed to, like, a headstone, or these kinds of symbols are commonly used. I guess it's kind of like grave fashion. I don't know.
Yeah, okay. Grave architecture.
Yeah. And lots of, like, some of them are, like, way over the top, and then other things are very, like, understated. So it's interesting. You're like, oh, why would you choose that over that? Or, yeah, maybe you didn't have any money, or maybe you did have money, but that wasn't what you were about. Or, yeah. So that was the first photo zine I made. And then the next one after that was, again, something I was making when I was, like, going through the process of, like, trying to reconcile living away with being back, and then also, like, my past in the wheat belt. So I made a zine called Return, which was just photographs that I produced on the first few visits back to my hometown, because, like, as much as you're like, oh, other places are different, like, fine, you can perceive that that's the case, but you don't really appreciate the, I guess, the way that things are different. So, like, in the wheat belt, there's very, like, specific architecture, or there's very specific, like, visual motifs that you're like, nowhere else has that particular thing, or that way of looking. Or...
Did you grow up in a farm or in the town?
So I grew up as a town kid.
Yeah.
And we moved out onto, like, a small property. And when I say small, I mean, like, 28 acres, which is very small by comparison to any of the other properties around us. My parents worked in town. They had jobs rather than, we didn't live off the land or anything. But I guess, like, I lived in that, like, middle ground of, like, oh, we have, like, go-karts and quad bikes, and you drive a car down to the bus stop.
Yeah.
To, like, yeah. So I had that sort of, like, middle ground of growing up out there. But then, like, yeah, the idea of having to, like, leave that as, like, it was always a given. Like, if you wanted to learn anything else, like, if you didn't want to be a diesel mechanic, or you didn't want to take a trade, like, be into carpentry or butchering or something, or, like, work the land, then you'd have to leave. There wasn't that many things you could learn. There wasn't tertiary education. Like, you could probably be a teacher's aide or start, like, Cert 2 nursing. That was kind of it. You'd have to come to the city to do any of those other things. I mean, there were, like, limited online capabilities back then, but it was really, like, let's be serious, you can't actually get an education that way. Nowadays, it's probably a little bit different. But yeah, it was very limited. I think in my graduating year there were 35 students. Which to anyone in a like big city is like, what? My class was bigger than that.
Yeah, I went to two high schools, and the first one got, I think like after year 8 they announced they're going to shut it down. So like everyone left. And I left a year before it shut down as well. But even the year that my last year there, yeah, there was like 47 people in our year or something.
Yeah. I don't know.
It got that real small town feel. And then I moved to a school that had like 300, and then that wasn't even including like international students, like, which were even more above that. Like.
Yeah, that's crazy. We had, I don't know if it was a similar thing where you were, but in like, so year 8 and 9 was kind of like everyone would go to school there. And then year 10 would be when, or after year 10 would be when all the like, who we classed as like the rich farm kids would get sent to like some private
dormitory.
school.
Yeah, my cousins did that.
You were like, oh, I'm still here.
Yeah.
And I'll just...
would have had a full high school at Meriden?
Yeah. So we were senior, so we did year 12 there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the whole time.
Did you keep in touch with the rich kids that went to dorms, or they go off to have a totally different life? Yeah,
kind of. Like, I don't really... There's a few friends that I still keep in touch with, but like not all of them were from high school. But yeah, it's a weird kind of like, lots of people stayed there and then married whoever they were dating at the end of high school and have like a bunch of kids. Or then you like left and I don't know if lots of people still keep in contact with their friends, or if everyone's like me and is like, oh, I'm doing other things. Yeah.
Did you have a school reunion, 10-year reunion?
I mean, I'm sure there was one. I don't know if I wasn't invited or I just didn't go. Like, either way, 10 years would have been... 2014 would have been the year that I left Australia. So maybe they had it and I just wandered about.
You said you're a town kid. Like, does that mean there was kind of a clique between the farm kids and the town kids?
I mean, I wouldn't say there's a clique. There would always be, like... I guess you had different understanding of stuff because you're like...
You never had to pull a cow out of another cow.
Yeah.
During spring season or whatever.
Or like...
rearings.
Witness weathering.
Yeah.
Or all that kind of stuff. Putting like rings on the tails of sheep and just being like, oh yeah, that's the thing.
Just cutting them off and like...
Oh yeah, or like... So my dad's a butcher, so... Lots of like super hectic stuff. Maybe that's why I'm vegetarian now, I'm not really sure.
Wow, okay. But not vegan?
Nah, vegetarian.
Okay.
I'm too lazy for that.
Yeah.
Working towards it. It's a project.
Did you have chickens on your 20 acres?
Yes.
Their own chickens?
We had chickens.
With their own eggs and stuff?
Yeah, so for a long time I wouldn't eat eggs. Not recently, but like back then, because you realise as a child whose chore is to collect eggs that chickens just shit the nest all the time. All the time.
Yeah.
You're like, there's just... Everything happens with that one hole. It happens in the nest.
I always thought, like, they always seem pretty happy, though. At least at my family's farm. But then you wonder what happened to all the male chickens.
Yeah.
Because there's no female.
You know.
Yeah.
You just don't want to talk about it.
Yeah. So you eat eggs now?
I eat eggs now. I am vegetarian / occasional pescatarian. So I occasionally eat fish as well. Because
Screw fish.
Yeah, I know. It's not great. It's not ideal. But then I think, like, if that has meant that I have been able to maintain my lack of meat consumption over a longer period of time, not that it's justified, but I feel like it's more manageable.
Mm-hmm. Have you made a zine about this?
No. I feel like there's lots of people who do things more well than I do that probably have opinions.
Have you done a written thing, like, recently, or they're still... like modern poetry, or this?
No.
Is that stuck in your
poetry is definitely out of my
past?
life now. Yeah, that's gone. That's good. That can stay there.
Stay in the wheat belt.
Yes. I have toyed with the idea of making a personal zine again, though, but not that strongly, I don't think. I have a few ideas, but I'm like, ooh, like, there's a few things that I'm like, well, maybe I'll make that, but I won't put my name to it. So it's a little bit of like a mystery.
Yeah, okay. Is that what people do? What?
Yeah, there's lots of zines that are written anonymously.
And where would you distribute it? Would you still put it at your table? Or?
I mean, I could put it at my table. You could distribute through Sticky and other like alternative distros.
Yeah.
There's I guess quite a famous in the zine circles free zine called Zine.
Yeah.
So they would always be distributed by hand, kind of throughout capital cities. In Perth, you'd find them outside Planet Video, or like at 78s, there'd be a few copies, and it's completely free, so you could just pick them up, and it would be like a letter written to you, and so it'd just be like the author would just be writing about like, oh yeah, today this happened, or like all kinds of different things. And that's been running for like maybe 10, oh, it's a lie, it might be 10 years, it could be longer, but very regularly. And they're distributed strongly outside of Sticky and a few other places in Melbourne. And there's a fun distro called Small Zine Volcano, and they basically only stock free zines.
Yeah.
So you'll pay some postage to them, and they'll send you an envelope full of free zines. So all of these are like serial zines. So there's one called Friday Night in West Ealing, and that the author will just write on Friday night. They live in West Ealing, which is in London. So they'll just be like, I went to a gig and this happened and that happened, and then I've been listening to this album. Then I was like too drunk to finish the zine, so I had to write the rest on Sunday, or like just all these kinds of things.
Yeah.
And there's another free zine that's called Rut Zine, and that's again like, I think they write it fortnightly, and will just be like, I think they're immigrated from the US to like Brisbane and Australia, so it's kind of just like personal about like their journey and moving and what it's like to live somewhere else. So, but that's I like that idea of like doing something regularly.
And you get it sent to you in the mail?
Yeah, so I think they get distributed locally for free, and then if they get distributed through Small Zine Volcano. So you just sign up for like, I don't know, like I can't remember the amounts, but just like $12 zine pack, and they'll just smash you with heaps of zines. So many zines.
Okay. And you just have to hope that the serial ones, you get them in the right order.
Yeah, I mean, you can make requests as well.
Okay,
So if you're like, go hard on West Ealing, then they'll hook you right up.
Awesome. Okay. Going back to where this all started, I met you at the Perth Comic Arts Festival, and obviously you're selling. There was lots of comic book artists there selling their comic books there, and there's a lot of like almost zine like comic books where they're really super personal stories, like they're not just superhero things. Like, was that your first overlap with that world, or is there a lot of comic people putting out zines?
Yeah, I mean, zines are a really good foothold for independent comic writers. Lots of people who maybe produce like web comics might dabble in zine production as well. I guess it's like one and the same for me in terms of like anything that you put in a zine is generally sequential art, which is, I guess, what comics are predominantly known for. So like you read it according to like from front to back, and the panels and the pages work together amongst each other. I've been a comic reader for like a few years now, not really like superhero stuff, but other sort of more independent. I read a lot of stuff by Image, which is like a publisher of comics, so they produce lots of works that are independently created by the makers, which don't really sort of follow that typical, I got bitten by a spider and then all this stuff suddenly happened and there's villains. Like they sort of work a little bit outside of that, I guess, trope a bit. So lots of stuff that's like, it's supernatural, but it's story-based, or different types of alternative stories, which I really enjoy. So
any recs?
Started out reading Lock and Key, which is not strictly, I don't think, an Image publication. They might be like, I couldn't even guess who publishes them, but I really like Saga, which is like...
Oh yeah, I've heard about that.
Yeah.
It's good?
Space.
It's about space?
Space alien drama. Battles across planets and stuff. Yeah.
Man, I'm going to check that out. I think I actually downloaded like the free issue they.
It's very good. There's lots of interesting characters and like.
Are there humans in it, or is it all aliens?
I'm pretty sure it's all aliens. Like it's all just different like species of people being intergalactic and stuff. I recommend there was a series called Witches, which is like super grim. It's a horror. Witches with a Y. What else have I really enjoyed reading? Bitch Planet's pretty fun. It's about like crazy, intense, feminist prison planet stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, lots of like cool art. Like coming out with
the feminists run the prison, or are they in the prison on the prison planet?
They're like in the prison. It's like a weird
this is what we,
patriarchal like...
This is what we do with all the feminists. We chuck them on this planet.
Yeah. And then we like shank them. Because we're all robots. Yeah, it's interesting. It's fun.
Okay.
But yeah, that's I guess like comics are another one of those things where like for externally it seems like, comics are all about like Superman and like the Phantom. And then once you're sort of like, you go into a comic book store and you like have a bit of a look around, you're like, oh, actually like there's a few different types of stories in here. Things are a bit unusual, like, I don't know, like considering what it's like going to be in the future or considering what AI is going to mean for us. But yeah, like you have to let yourself get in there before you can realise those sorts of things. So that's a nice crossover. I like that. Getting to be involved in the Perth Comic Arts Festival meant that I got to like see lots of people whose work I admire and then look at alternative ways. So I can't really draw. I don't really like, not that I don't like to draw, but I'm not very good and I find that frustrating. Yeah, I guess I think that because you're working in a medium that is sequential, you can kind of take things from it that maybe you can't get just by like only looking at photozines. Like if that's all you ever look at, you won't kind of think as outside the box as if you're looking at other types of mediums and being like, oh, that's interesting, maybe I can incorporate that somehow, or that's something I haven't considered before.
We're in the middle of Fringe Festival at the moment, so like the cultural district where we've seen some interesting characters. I almost thought we were going to be part of a DJ party.
I know, yeah.
For a second there.
A moment. And then the security walked past as if like, what are you doing with microphones over there?
Yeah.
That's all right.
Like, what was the haunt in Meriden? Like, did you guys have a skate park, or did you have a BMX track?
We had a skate park. We had, like these BMX jumps that people would like regularly go into the bush and like build up and then get in trouble for doing it because it's somebody's land. And like,
did you have a BMX?
No. I'm very uncoordinated.
What did you do?
I didn't really do any of that kind of stuff, just sort of hung around.
Yeah.
There's those people that just are around. But yeah, you'd like, on like, I can't remember what day it was, so I don't know about your town, but we had like the hut, which was like kids from farms that were like so far away that you couldn't get a bus to it would stay at like the residential college.
Okay.
Which we called the hut. And like, I can't remember what day of the week it was, might have been a Thursday or something. They were allowed down the street.
Oh,
so you'd all go down the street and you'd get chips from Snoopy's cafe and you'd hang about and like be loud and make a mess. And
did you have a newsagent?
Yeah. I think we had two for a while. Rival newsagents.
I remember like newsagents felt like a much more important part of like the country town. I was a city kid, but I probably spent a month a year, because we got shipped off to the farm for the school holidays when my parents didn't want to pay for a babysitter and stuff like that. And we used to travel around Australia a lot, and so you would get into town and there's no internet back then, even it's probably not even that much internet today, and it's like, oh, come on, can we go to the newsagent and get a comic and stuff? And so my entire comic consumption as a kid was all in country towns around Australia. As soon as I came back to the city, I guess I had the internet really young when I was a kid, so I was just back to the internet when I got back. Like, what did you have things at there? I remember my cousin was really into Dolly magazine.
Oh, man.
And she taught me about the birds and the bees by reading me articles from Dolly magazine.
So weird thinking about like Dolly magazine and Cleo when you got a bit older. You're like, oh, sealed section.
Oh, yeah.
Damn. But yeah, it was. Oh, you just think about like what trash we must have consumed back there.
Did you ever get into like? Did they have comics? I didn't. At the newsagents, or?
I mean, they must have had comics, but I wasn't really that interested in them because I still sort of like it was. tucked in that like superhero seem lame. Like,
Yeah.
you can't, like,
Yeah.
and I guess like at the time it was always like, oh yeah, that's like for dudes. You're still sort of like
That's for
conforming
dudes,
for
yeah.
those kinds of like the rules.
Yeah.
I mean, there were a few things that I was like, oh yeah, dresses are shit, so I'm not going to do that. But you were still generally conforming to those ideas that were delivered to you at that age. So yeah, I wasn't really into comics or anything like that. That was a very like, can't remember when, but I was like, I think comics are a thing that I might be interested in. And then I committed to going into a comic book store when they have free comic book day, which is like May or June. And yeah, I was like, just like, I walked in there with a purpose, and that was like to find something that would make sense to me. And I was like, because when I was a kid, I was always reading a lot, and I was like a library nerd, and you'd like read all this series and then you read that series. So it seemed like something that I knew that I would like if I could find something I'd be interested in. And it was just a matter of like spending a bit of time and trying not to be intimidated by people who obviously like you're entering a space where somebody else knows heaps more than you do, and you don't want to seem like the outsider. So you're like, at least under the safety of free comic book day, there's lots of people around, so I can just sneak in and have a look.
Yeah.
And I guess I kind of like, so Quality Comics in Perth would always have like a big super cheap section of like back issues where you could buy like 5 for $1 or something. So you'd like scrounge through and you'd find a couple issues, like random issues of something, and you're like, oh, the art seems pretty cool, like I'll buy a copy and I'll take it home and I'll read it and I'll decide if like I dig the characters or the story. And then you go back and you like get more invested in the series and stuff.
It seems like today there's probably ample, well, I don't know, ample's the right word, but there seems to be way more like stuff targeted at women, like, than back then when it was like, oh, this is dude stuff for
definitely
dudes.
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be gatekeeping in all circles, but like, I think,
do you just go to the Quality Comics? Well, when you first went to Quality Comics, was there any of that stuff there, or is it still just dude stuff?
No, I mean, there's loads of non-dudes that are into like Batman and whatever. Like, I guess it's more like internalized. You're trying to break down the things that you consider to be this or that, and then like you projecting, that person probably thinks this is not for me. So then, or like you not being an expert in a particular area means that maybe you're not allowed to like that type of thing. It's either like all or nothing. You know everything about it, and therefore you're allowed in that circle, or you don't know anything about it, and therefore you're an imposter. But again, that's projection. Like, I don't think that many people really care. So let's just like go and have a look and see if we like something and be interested. But you can be as committed or not committed as you want. Like, let's not worry so much. But I guess that's probably comes with age. You get more confident in those sorts of things as you get older.
So what are you taking with you to Melbourne? Like, what's...
Oh, I've purchased myself a plane ticket with luggage.
Yeah.
Such luxury. Yeah, I'm trying to like collect up a few zines from some makers from over here who I think their work is really awesome.
Are you going with anyone?
No, I'm going alone.
Yeah.
Solo.
Are you expecting to run into people that you might know?
Well, I'm staying at one of the Sticky Institute volunteers places.
Okay. We're
going to head in, so yeah, sounds like it's going to be a fun but busy weekend. Hopefully eat some nice food in the meantime as well. Yeah, just going to like pack a suitcase full of lots of very heavy zines. Paper is heavy.
Yeah.
And yeah, then I had to like, I put a post out on Zines Australia to be like, okay, I need recommendations of how to safely pack this stuff.
Okay, yeah.
So yeah, trying to work out like putting it in like containers inside the big container, which is my suitcase.
Yeah, in case it just sits out in the rain for a while. And so they're not everyone that you're taking is involved with Xerox days?
So generally, most of the people who I'm taking stuff over have either had their stuff at Xerox days or have meant to.
What are you walking into? Is like a stall, like at Perth Comics, like a little market thing?
It's a little market. It's like a lot smaller. I mean, it's quite a bit smaller than Perth Comic Arts Festival. We don't usually have as many stall holders, so it's not as busy. We do try to make sure that, like, even if somebody only has one zine, like, you can come. Like, that's totally fine. Like, I want it to be like an entry-level situation where everyone can turn up.
Yeah.
Or everyone has the possibility of like stocking something and it not being crazy intimidating. Because I know that like some of these big zine fairs are like proper hectic.
Yeah.
Like I'm expecting Festival of the Photocopier to be like, by the end of the day I'll probably have lost my voice. But and that's, I mean, I can understand that that's not necessarily for everybody. Like it can be pretty overwhelming and intimidating. So yeah, trying to keep it like manageable and like welcoming and accessible to most people is important.
Have you looked into like doing, I don't know if it's financially viable, like, you know, because all these like councils now have these little pop-up markets over Christmas, every Sunday on the lead up to Christmas, the month of like 5 Sundays on the row lead up to Christmas. I guess I live just near the new stadium, and they had it, you know, have you been there? They've got that little arbour thing, they call it arbour, it's like this tunnel of stuff.
Oh yeah.
And they had a little fest market under there. You know, there's lots of crafts people and stuff like that. And, you know, back when I used to live in Leederville, they used to have, like, little markets, like, the third Friday of every month or something like that. Like,
I haven't really looked into those particular ones, but I know that, like, the big markets like Perth Upmarket and all these kinds of places that specifically look at handmade items can be quite exy in the cost it is, and that's another part of Xerox Days is I don't want stallholders to be paying money for them being there. Like I want them to be there because they've made amazing work and so that anyone can access that space.
So do you pay for it, or is it?
So far I've been lucky enough to have venues that aren't charging me for the venue, and I've borrowed lots of equipment like tables from various people, so it hasn't, aside from my time,
it
hasn't really. Yeah, it's just me.
Oh wow.
It's just me.
Do you get friends to help you out? Or you said you got the volunteers at Paper Mountain?
Paper Mountain helped out heaps when I was there, and then the previous market was at the Moon, and those guys were also incredibly amazing.
So what was the Moonlight? Did you have that like late night kind of thing? Or was it?
No, it was like a Sunday arvo.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, we're sort of getting a little big for the Moon. And Paper Mountain, like we sort of have to fit in amongst their other programming. So the next iteration of Xerox Days we're hoping is going to be towards the end of March, maybe early April. It's going to be it's actually in conjunction with some work being done by some friends of mine with the City of Vincent, doing some sort of place activation.
Yep.
And yeah, hopefully if all goes well, it's going to be out of North Perth Town Hall. So that'll be a little bit bigger, which would be cool.
Yeah, it's massive.
So we see how that kind of runs and works.
City events, I'm seeing like pretty cool people that work there. They're always trying to get stuff going.
Lots of places that are trying to get what zines kind of are in their spaces. So like they want young people to be involved. They want spaces to be used. I think zines are a good outlet for young people because they don't necessarily have to justify their choices. They could just, I like bugs. Look at these cool bug facts. Like zines can be literally anything, and I think that freedom is good, and the accessibility of the materials, because you got a piece of paper, got like a marker or some scissors, and you're pretty much good to go for a zine.
Awesome. So what you reckon Xerox next Xerox Days will be in April?
Yeah, I'm hoping like the end of March, but we'll see.
Oh, end of March. Okay. But I'll link in the show notes will be the link to Xerox Days and your Instagram, which is
14th Frame.
Yeah, and that's your personal stuff where you put your personal work.
Yeah, so like the weirder photography.
I'll have the links to all your stuff, and hopefully your Melbourne trip goes well and you make lots of cool contacts. And
thanks. Yeah, I'm pretty hyped.
Like yeah.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Cheers. See ya.
Bye.